The snow had barely stopped falling when they came. It was just past dawn. The sky above the Colorado plains had turned pale, bruised with the chill of a February wind. In the distance, smoke curled from a circle of lodges near a frozen creek, soft plumes rising into silence. Children stirred near the fires. Dogs sniffed the air. The wind was light, cold, and clean. No one in the Cheyenne camp knew they were being watched. Across a distant ridge, a mounted patrol waited, tense and quiet. Cavalrymen hunched in their saddles, breath fogging in the cold, gloved fingers tightening on trigger guards. Behind them, a young officer adjusted his spyglass. What he saw was a village at peace. No sentries, no guards, no war paint. But to him, that didn't matter. He had orders. And minutes later, with no parley and no warning, he raised his hand and dropped it. The soldiers kicked their heels into their horses and charged. Inside the camp, Sitting Bear was tying his moccasins. The fire beside him was low. Outside, his daughter was brushing snow off a frozen hide. His wife was cooking a thin stew of dried meat and corn. The morning smelled of wood smoke and frost. Then came the first gunshot, loud and close. Dogs howled, a child screamed, a horse bolted. Sitting Bear stepped from the lodge into chaos. The cavalry came thundering from the east, rifles raised, sabers flashing in the morning light. Dozens of them. Their mounts kicked up snow and mud as they descended into the shallow valley. At first, the people in the camp froze, too shocked to understand what was happening. Then came the second volley. Bullets tore through a line of lodges. A woman was hit in the back. A child's leg shattered. One dog flipped sideways with a yelp and fell still. The soldiers kept coming, reloading on horseback, cutting through the heart of the camp like a blade through canvas. Sitting Bear stepped forward with both arms raised, shouting in English, "We are peaceful. We are peaceful." He took one step closer. Then a bullet punched through his ribs. He crumpled to the snow, gasping. Blood spread beneath him, steaming in the cold. His daughter ran to him and was shot through the thigh. His wife was struck trying to pull her back, and by then the fighting had begun in earnest. Some of the Cheyenne men, barely awake, scrambled for their weapons. A handful fired back from behind snow-covered wagons. Others ducked into the trees, hoping to flank the cavalry with bows or rusted muskets. The resistance was scattered and frantic, but fierce. One young warrior, Yellow Otter, fired from behind a tipped cooking pot, hitting a soldier in the shoulder. The soldier screamed and went down. Two more cavalrymen turned and opened fire on the smoke from Yellow Otter's rifle. They didn't see his younger brother crawl behind them with a tomahawk. He struck one down before the other spun and fired point blank. The boy's body pitched sideways and lay still. A group of Cheyenne women tried to shield children behind a fallen lodge frame. One of them, an elder named White Feathers, stood in front with a raised blanket, chanting an old protection song. A soldier barked a command. Another raised his weapon. She dropped before the words left her lips. The children behind her ran into the tall grass. Two would survive, hiding beneath frozen cattails for hours after the gunfire had stopped. Another Cheyenne man, Stormhorse, grabbed his grandfather's old musket and fired from the edge of the woods. He struck a cavalryman clean through the chest, then ducked as two more closed in. He led them in a chase through the timber, firing twice more and dropping another before they finally caught him in a narrow draw. They found his body slumped over a tree root, blood frozen to his tunic. To the soldiers, it was little more than a sweep. They moved methodically, lodge to lodge, firing at movement, silencing cries. One officer, dismounting, pulled back a flap and fired 3 shots into the dark without looking. Inside, they later found only a sleeping mat and a broken pipe. It lasted 20 minutes. 20 minutes of shouting, smoke, and death. And then, just as quickly, it was over. The camp was in ruins. The snow was stained red. Lodges burned low. Horses screamed in the distance. Survivors wailed over the bodies of mothers, sons, daughters. And Sitting Bear lay where he had fallen, eyes half closed to the winter sky. 13 were dead. 4 of them women. 3 were children. Dozens wounded. Fires flickered where the soldiers had torn down shelters looking for weapons. They found a few rifles, most old and powder damp. No scalps, no stolen goods, no sign of any white captives, because none had been there. This was not the band that had raided the ranch. But the cavalry commander wrote his report that evening anyway. Engaged hostile Cheyenne at dawn. Victory. Minimal U.S. losses. No mention of Sitting Bear's white flag. No mention of the women. No mention of the children. The papers would carry the story 2 days later. Army breaks up Indian threat near Big Sandy. But in Fort Larned, the truth cracked through. An agent who had met Sitting Bear recognized his name. He remembered the man as quiet, courteous, hopeful. He recalled giving him a length of white cloth months earlier, said he wore it like a sash, said he wanted only to farm, to live near the agency, that his family had survived Sand Creek and still believed someone might treat them with fairness. The agent filed a protest. It went unanswered. By then, the Army had already moved on. For the Cheyenne, though, the wounds did not heal. Sitting Bear had been one of the last headmen to believe peace was possible. His band had fled the warpath, carried no trophies. Their children had never seen battle, but now they had. And what they'd seen was enough. In the weeks that followed, scattered bands of Cheyenne and Arapaho joined the resistance in growing numbers. Some rode north to join Lakota war parties. Others returned to the Bozeman Trail to ambush freighters and settlers. Treaties were burned in fire pits. Flags were torn apart. The killing of Sitting Bear wasn't just another massacre. It was the final confirmation that peace would not protect them. And in a war already boiling, it pushed many over the edge. By winter's end, the plains were bleeding again. The U.S. Army now faced coordinated opposition across Wyoming, Montana, and the Dakotas. Red Cloud's war would enter full swing. Forts would burn. Supply lines would stretch thin. And in the years that followed, thousands more would die. It began, in part, with a camp they called peaceful, with a man who didn't fight, with a white cloth on a pole fluttering uselessly in the wind. Today there is no marker for Sitting Bear's camp. The land near Big Sandy Creek rolls gently, broken only by wind and cottonwoods. Most pass through without knowing what was taken there, what was lost. But for the Cheyenne descendants who remember, the story is told each winter, around firelight, in low voices. Not with anger, but with certainty. Because in a land of broken promises, Sitting Bear stood for one that was never kept, and died for believing it still could be. Thank you for listening to Deserted Trails. Subscribe for more forgotten stories from the old frontier.